He went there once, he saw a massage table surrounded by candles in the living room, and he got so creeped out he never set foot there again.
Anna is basically saying, yeah, let it all out.
This video breaks down Donald Trump's sudden flip on releasing the Epstein documents, why Republicans like Thomas Massie are openly suspicious of him, and how Scott Jennings is scrambling on air to spin Trump's involvement even though Trump is actually named in the emails tied to Epstein. We're looking at what the victims are demanding, what the documents really show, and why the MAGA defense is falling apart. If you're new here, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Now let's get into it.
Release the Epstein files. No, it's not just House Democrats saying that. Now it's apparently Donald Trump, too.
So I'm for any, I don't, they can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them. And it's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax.
So maybe the change of tune is because Trump saw the writing on the wall on this. Republican Thomas Massie has been leading the charge for this vote, and he tells CNN that support is growing and that he is skeptical about Trump's about-face there.
Well, he got tired of us winning, and he decided to join us. But we're, a little bit suspicious of this sudden turn of events, so we'll keep an eye on things. We're worried that maybe they'll try to muck it up in the Senate.
Now, before we get started, I want to mention that Scott Jennings has a new book out. It's called A Revolution of Common Sense, How Donald Trump Stormed Washington and Fought for Western Civilization. It comes out tomorrow. You see it there. Everyone pick it up. On the Thomas Massie of it all, he's suspicious, and I don't blame him. Because Trump didn't want the Epstein files released, and he's sort of half-heartedly saying, well, just release them all, while also saying, we'll only investigate the Democrats in all of this.
I am tired of this conversation being about Republicans and Democrats, because to me it's just so much about right and wrong and the ways that we as a country, as a society, our institutions have failed these victims. I think it's got to be very hurtful for those victims to hear the President of the United States refer to their plight as a hoax. I urge people watching to go and look for this PSA that some of those victims put out today.
We do have it, and we can play. Let me just play a little bit of it.
They're holding pictures of themselves.
Let's play it.
I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
So that's very much not a hoax. It's very real. It has ruined the lives and scarred those women for the rest of their lives. I think collectively we've got to stop fighting about this being Democrat or Republican. This was a bunch of rich men who felt entitled to do whatever the hell they wanted and thought they could get away with it. And they almost did. But for the Me Too movement in 2017, and but for the Miami Herald expose by Julie K. Brown, the truth is, shamefully, that Jeffrey Epstein was well on his way to being accepted and rehabbed and be back in respectable society. And so these women deserve transparency. They deserve closure. I do think tomorrow's vote is going to be huge. I have called upon and texted some Republicans that I know, asking them to vote yes. And they have all told me, these are all people who usually vote with Trump 100%. They've all told me they are voting yes. So I do think it's going to send a very strong message.
Anna makes a really important point. Why is it that Trump, if he says whatever, does he have something to hide? I don't know. No one knows. But putting that all aside, why can't he see this for what it is, which is a very real thing, not a hoax, with real victims, and with a lot of people potentially involved in something, none of whom have been held accountable?
Well, the hoax is Democrats and others who have gone on television and either implied or worse that he had something to do with it. There's not a shred of evidence that he had anything to do with it, but that's what they want people to believe. That's the narrative that they are trying to get out there. That's the hoax. He's never said what happened to them is a hoax. In fact, there seems to be some shards of evidence in here that Trump may have been one of the people that turned in Jeffrey Epstein, which is why Epstein, according to some of the documents, apparently hated Donald Trump. And so the hoax is not that it happened. The hoax is what people are trying to imply or worse about.
You're citing the documents. And look, the truth is, I'm kind of where Anna is on this. I don't know that we know anything about Trump's involvement or lack thereof. But I do know that he is named in these documents. I do know that he is named in a way that raises questions, and that is something that is real. Does it mean that he actually did something wrong? That we don't know. But if Trump has nothing to hide, and he's totally entitled to say that, to believe that, he should be clamoring for these documents, for the full context to be released, but he's not doing that.
Let's start with Scott Jennings' claim that Trump appearing in the Epstein emails is actually good for him because it doesn't implicate him. That's not analysis, that's not commentary. That's someone diving headfirst into denial because acknowledging reality would make the whole MAGA project crumble. Trump isn't clear just because Scott says so. Trump is named in the documents. Trump appears in victim-related context. Trump was documented spending hours with a victim at his home. That is not nothing. That is not irrelevant. That is not a hoax. That is the very definition of something worth investigating. But Scott's mission isn't to inform anyone. His mission is to erase every uncomfortable fact with the magical wand of Democrats bad, Trump good. The moment someone asks why Trump suddenly wants the documents released, Jennings pretends it's because Democrats have been unfair. Never mind that Trump spent years fighting transparency. Never mind that he only flipped after Republicans like Thomas Massie. Yes, Republicans forced the issue and made the vote impossible to dodge. Massie literally said they're suspicious of Trump's sudden cooperation. When Republicans are calling out their own former president, something is off. And then we get to Anna's point about victims. This is the moment where Scott's spin collapses. Because you cannot watch victims holding photos of themselves at 14, 15, 16 years old and call any of this a hoax. You can't look at decades of abuse, cover-ups, sweetheart deals, and elite protection and pretend this is just another partisan brawl. These women were children. Their lives were shattered. The moral thing, the human thing, is to release every document, expose every enabler, and make sure no powerful man can exploit children and hide behind connections ever again. But that's the problem, right? Epstein's circle wasn't left versus right. It was rich, connected, powerful people who thought rules didn't apply to them. Some Republicans, some Democrats, some billionaires, some celebrities, some respectable philanthropists. Abuse thrives in silence, and Epstein's silence was protected by money, status, and politicians who would rather look away than confront their friends. Scott Jennings pretends he wants accountability while carefully carving out a special exemption for one person, Donald Trump. Everyone else named should resign, he suggests. Everyone else named should be condemned. Everyone else named should be scrutinized. But Trump? Trump is magically absolved before the facts even drop. This is why MAGA commentary has become a parody of itself. They don't argue, they don't reason. They protect Trump as if he's a fragile artifact that will shatter if exposed to the truth. Then Scott claims there's not a shred of evidence Trump had involvement. Really? Because the documents naming him disagree. The old email referencing Trump spending hours with a victim disagrees. The sudden back and forth from Trump about releasing documents disagrees. Even Trump's own base sees the contradiction. If he's innocent, then transparency should help him. But every time transparency closes in, he dances, pivots, or blames Democrats. When the panel pushes back and reminds Scott that multiple people across both parties were emailing Epstein after he was a convicted sex offender, Jennings again zooms in only on Democrats. He refuses to apply his own standard to Republicans. He ignores the simple point: anyone who kept associating with Epstein after his conviction deserves scrutiny. That includes Democrats, Republicans, business leaders, academics, celebrities, everyone. Accountability stops being real when it only applies to your political enemies. And then comes the most bizarre part. Scott suggests that Trump cut off Epstein and that Epstein hated Trump. But the documents don't say that. Reports say they had a falling out over real estate. Others mention Epstein disliking Trump. None of that equals innocence. None of that equals moral purity. If anything, the fact that Trump keeps dancing around this topic suggests he knows transparency doesn't automatically help him. Meanwhile, victims are begging for truth, begging for closure, begging for justice. And MAGA pundits like Scott Jennings treat the whole conversation like a political inconvenience to be spun away. It's vile. It's cowardly. It's an insult to the women whose lives were destroyed by Epstein and the powerful men who surrounded him. And that's why the final line from the panel rings true. MAGA loyalists have wandered so far into delusion they're defending a man who is undeniably entangled in Epstein's orbit. They're stuck rationalizing behavior they'd condemn instantly if it came from anyone else. They have no moral compass left, only loyalty to Trump.
So you believe after 10 years of this, of him being on the public stage, that if there was something to know, we wouldn't know it, by now. Look, the issue is...
I mean, you could make that argument about every single person who's implicated in these documents.
Okay,
you cannot, that is not a legitimate argument.
And you just raised the key issue.
Every single person who may or may not be implicated, the argument is, if there was something to know, we would have known it. If there was something to know, yeah, I mean, it's in the documents, and we don't know it about not just Trump, anybody.
So you just raised the key issue. You use the word implicated. If someone's name appears in these documents, it doesn't necessarily mean they did anything wrong, but I'm sure that is going to lead people to say, oh, they've been implicated, and so we'll see what comes out. I have no expectations.
Scott, can I tell you, they may not have done something criminal. Just the fact that they are having email exchanges does not mean that they did something criminal.
Like Larry Summers.
Okay, but
or Stacey Plaskett.
Yes.
The fact that they're having exchanges
exactly.
with Epstein.
That may not be criminal. I do think it is wrong. And the reason I think it's wrong is because by the time that the emails that we are seeing in this trove that was released are from 2019 and 2018 and 2016. Mm-hmm. That is way after Epstein had served 13 months in that sweetheart deal in Florida, after he had served 1 year under house arrest, after he had registered as a sex offender. And so these people, a lot of them who are folks that are admired by our society, famous, rich, powerful, in very elite circles in Palm Beach and in New York, were conversing with him and communicating with him and treating him. I mean, people like Deepak Chopra.
Does that apply? Does your concern apply to Stacey Plaskett?
Absolutely. It applies. Did you just hear me?
Across the board.
Did you just hear me say?
You think she should resign? Should she resign?
There you go again, trying to make this into a Democrat.
I think it's very.
She was being programmed by him after the moment you said we all knew.
It's very hypocritical for you to call out the names of only the Democrats, but not apply the very same logic to everyone.
What Republican was he programming?
Listen, hold on. You're basically saying if you're named in these documents, I guess you're saying that they should be condemned. Anna is basically saying, let it all out. But you're the only one who's making a carve out for one person, and that's Donald Trump.
There's no evidence that he had any contact with Epstein after he excommunicated him, but we do have evidence that he was programming Democrat members of Congress. Why isn't that a big deal to you guys?
I guess the point is we just don't know.
We do know that. We absolutely know he was programming Plaskett.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what we don't know about the Trump bit of it. That's all.
No, but I mean, the sad thing is, Sister Anna's point about the weighting gravitas of what is right and what is wrong so easily gets erased and eliminated because integrity, honesty, and decency gets pushed aside and it becomes just a partisan matter of Democrats versus Republicans. We know that gangsterism is promiscuous. It will lie with Democrats, Republicans, independents, leftist, center, right, Christians, Jews, Catholics, Muslims. It's a human thing. And we have so many layers of corruption now, so many levels of outright lies, that the issues of what is right and what is wrong has no footing at all. Now, you know it, I know it. Look, when you're talking about common sense, that's Thomas Paine, brother. You invoke Thomas Paine, right?
I'll tell you,
has a morality in his text, and he's a foe of tyrants, a foe of autocrats, and a foe of...
Batya, why is Trump flip-flopping on this? On whether or not he would support the vote and the release of the documents?
So first of all, I think some documents that named him that came out last week, actually, he came off looking pretty good. Like, he didn't like how Jeffrey Epstein was behaving, and he cut off ties with him. I'm sure that
I don't think that's what the document said. The document said that Jeffrey Epstein didn't like Trump, which we know, but they also had a falling out much earlier over essentially real estate in Florida.
Well,
that's what we do know.
It's unclear what it was exactly over, but he did learn that Jeffrey Epstein really didn't like him, and that's what sort of the trend was in those documents. I think also, you know, Trump is very good at reading his base, and I have to say, I think there's a real divide here between the voter base and then the online content creators of the right. Those people are obsessed with Jeffrey Epstein, and a lot of Republican lawmakers are very much enthralled to this online energy. But the actual voting base, I think they really don't care about that. They care about immigration and they care about affordability. And I think Trump felt that now we're going to waste a whole week talking about this thing that is, you're right, it's important to talk about it. Justice for the victims, of course, is extremely important. But a lot of people get caught up in that dragnet. Alan Dershowitz is a perfect example. He's a person who was named by one of the victims, and she had to recant, but he never got his reputation back. And so I think the question is, how many Jeffrey Epsteins are in there? How many Larry?
A lot of, hold on. We do have to hit pause here.
There's three Republican women: Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not a fan of any of them. However, those women, I think, are not looking at this through a political prism. I think they're looking at this as women, because we all know that before Me Too, a lot of people thought it was okay to sexually harass women and to sexually abuse women, particularly if you were rich and empowered and entitled in this country and get away with it. It's not just Jeffrey Epstein. There's a bunch of Jeffrey Epsteins and rich men. That's what he was coddling to. And I'll tell you another person that I give a lot of credit to, Howard Lutnick, the current Secretary of Commerce, who was his next door neighbor, Jeffrey Epstein, and went to his house once and said, I didn't have to go there again. Go listen to the podcast people that he did on this. He went there once. He saw a massage table surrounded by candles in the living room, and he got so creeped out he never set foot there again.
At the end of the day, this isn't about party labels. It's about truth, accountability, and whether the most powerful people in the country can hide behind political shields while victims beg for justice. Anyone who truly cares about democracy should want the same thing: full transparency, equal standards, and zero excuses for predators or those who protect them. This is Andre on Politics. Let me know what you think. Do you believe Trump's sudden flip was genuine, or was he trying to get ahead of something coming? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button if this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.